Welcome, salam wa rahmatullah.
What do you think of Shaykh Muhammad's statement that you have to string your pearls together? I picked up that image again of a string of pearls. And you said, don't let your pearls just be rolling around and everything else. What do you think he means by the string of pearls?
Tough question.
Does he mean you stay with the stay connected with?
I would hazard a guess and say maybe he's referring to in the same way the string keeps the tasbih together, the beads on it. Maybe he's referring to the connection with the Shaykh.
Yeah.
I mean, I would hazard a guess and say he's referring to that. Because if the string of the tasbih breaks, then the beads basically fall everywhere. You'd have to find someone to fix it for you. But if you maintain that connection with your Shaykh, with Shaykh Nazim,
you kind of also expanded on it and said that you have these spiritual experiences, you have these revelations, but it's important that you have a string to...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, I would probably hazard a guess he's referring, and maybe he's not directly saying it, but indirectly saying to maintain the connection with him. Because sometimes you may experience spiritual experiences or vision things, but it can kind of like take you off the path if you don't have a Shaykh to guide you.
Very simple question, well, hopefully not too simple. For an average person, this literature, the soul of it, how would it affect a general person? How do we use it?
How do we use it?
Did you hear the question, everyone? So he asked us, how does the average person benefit and use the literature of Sufism?
The best answer I can give you regarding that, as best as I possibly can, is by sitting with your teachers or shuyukh and reading the books. Earlier on this year in February, I was in Umrah. Then I went to the house of our Shaykh in Jeddah and I was sat with the family. And I was speaking to one of the grandsons, Habib Umar bin Hamid al-Haddad. And he was mentioning that when he was growing up, he said we would sit with our grandfather, Habib Ahmad al-Shur, and he said that we would read the books, like the Tafsir of Imam al-Baghawi, the book Kalam of Imam al-Ghazali, and so on. And we'd read the books to Habib and then read the commentaries. But he said then what would happen is that Habib would give us his interpretation of what is being said. And he was expressing the importance to me that when you go back home, that you also, and the brothers of the Tariqah and the Zawiyah, you need to sit and read the books together, but sit with a teacher who can expand on the meanings of what's being said in them. And then he was further explaining that. He says when Habib was alive in Jeddah, he says, people like Hamza, I'm sure you all know Hamza Yusuf, he would come to visit Habib in Jeddah, spend time with him, and they would go through books, but then Habib would expand upon the meanings, those meanings that you can't find in the commentaries, but because he was an accomplished master, he was able to give a more spiritual aspect, angle to it. And Hamza Yusuf would come, Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad would come to visit him, Dr. Umar Farooq Abdullah, he would come to visit, he learned fiqh from Habib, and so on. So by sitting with scholars, masters, teachers like this, who are far more well versed in the, not just the sort of physical knowledge, but it's a spiritual knowledge. Because we can read the commentaries of the books, but we might not necessarily understand the meaning of what's being said. But when you sit with people like Habib or like Habib al-Saghaf or the scholars like this, what they are teaching you is a far more sort of a profound, in-depth meaning of what's being said in the text. But also what's taking place at the same time is, even though you can't see it because our hearts and eyes are veiled, there's like a spiritual transmission to transmit the meaning, so it's far more understandable. So when you go back to your own country or back to your own people, you're able to relay that information in a manner that's benefiting to them.
Thank you for a great talk.
Alhamdulillah.
I have seen on social media as well how a lot of youngsters travel to sheikhs such as Shaykh Habib Umar recently, so a lot with some of the social media people. I just wanted to ask, the Sufi books do mention about sitting with the sheikh and reading these books with the sheikh such as Habib Umar, and is this option available for women as well?
Um,
Like, would you be
it's for now, because you mentioned that, Umar, it's the way the system is in Hadramaut. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, we were there last year with my family, and they have two areas. So basically, Dar al-Mustafa is for the men, so the men teach the men, and then Dar al-Zahra is for the ladies. So all the female students are there, totally separate away from the men. I think it's on the other side of the sort of town. Tarim isn't a very large town. It's quite small, but so you'll have like Dar al-Mustafa here, and Dar al-Zahra is probably like on the other side of the town. But the women.
It's close. It's close.
Is it close?
Yeah, it's like 2 minutes walk.
2 minutes walk. It's like I've not seen Dar al-Zahra, so like somebody said it's over there. So when you stand outside,
it's over there.
Yeah. So when you stand outside Dar al-Mustafa, and someone says it's over there, so when you look in the direction, all you see is like mountains. Yeah, so you just assume that it's literally over there. But so it's the women are taught by the women, and the men are taught by the men. In my time that I was there, I did not see any like female students sit with Habib or being taught anything like this. It's very segregated, but they make a point of that the female students are taught by the female teachers only.
And the female teachers are equally well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they're at the same level as Habib Umar, but they will be at a competent level whereby they can teach. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put them there. But yeah, they will have gone through the system. The teachers themselves will have gone through the curriculum of Dar al-Zahra, learning the Quran, Hadith, Fiqh, Seerah, and all these kind of things. Then they basically carry on and disseminate the knowledge.
It's so interesting because I'm quite new to like reading about Sufism and Tasawwuf. There's so many great men, awliya. I was just wondering, where are the women? Like you talk about Habib Umar and.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about other institutions. I believe there are institutions within the UK that do teach female students and take female students, and they have female teachers. There is, I believe in Liverpool, there's an organization called Dar al-Zahra, and I think they teach women as well. Mm. So they have female teachers for female teachers for female students. But in regards to going abroad to study, I mean, I can't comment for any of the other countries because I personally don't know. But I only know because of Tarim, because we went there last year and we stayed there for a month or so. But that's how they do it, yeah. But Habib Umar, in my experience, from what I saw, he does not teach any female students. Besides traveling, doing dawah and tabligh and so on, he's teaching at Dar al-Mustafa. And the female students have their own teachers. And there's only the one person that I know, one of the teachers there, because they don't have a teacher that teaches Hanafi fiqh, because everyone over there is Shafi. So he teaches Hanafi fiqh at Dar al-Zahra. But other than that, he's the only one that I know.
Do you have gatherings for women?
Yes.
Only where sometimes the Shaykh will go and he'll sit with them for like an hour a week. They have those type of things, but it's not.
It's not regular.
Day.
Yeah. Sorry.
I have a two-pronged question that's related. You mentioned about Imam al-Ghazali.
Mm-hmm.
So we have witnessed testimony from his contemporaries, including his student Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, the Maliki jurist. He described, when he went to study with Imam al-Ghazali, he described him as, when he entered into the room, it was like the sun illuminating the darkness. So we know from his contemporaries that he attained a high level in terms of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I believe there's a discussion whether he actually had a formal spiritual guide. You mentioned the Shaykh
Yusuf Nisaj, yes.
Yusuf Nisaj.
Yeah.
Would you be able to share some more details? Was he actually affiliated with any spiritual path, or?
I'll be honest, I don't know, so I can't answer the question. I mean, as far as I know, he did have a Shaykh Yusuf Nisaj, but in terms of whether he had an affiliation, etc., which went further than that, I honestly can't answer that question. Without a doubt, he was a spiritually illuminated individual. Even Imam al-Haddad in his Kalam, he says that the Sa'd Alawi says internally we are Shadili and externally we are Ghazali, meaning that externally we emulate and act upon the teachings of Imam Ghazali, and internally we are Shadili, that we do shukr to Allah for the ni'mah and blessing that are upon us. In one of the books, Sabil al-Muhtadeen, it mentions that Imam al-Ghazali was the Qutb for 3 days, and after that he passed away. But there's not much in terms of sort of expansion on that, and more like an in-depth reference or anything like this. There's sort of like brief passages I made in the books, and that's all there is in it. But unfortunately, I can't expand on that question because I don't know myself much.
Sure. And my second related question, open to yourself as well, Shaykh Bilal, perhaps you might be able to share some insights, is in this day and age, do we need to have a formal affiliation to a particular spiritual path or a particular sheikh, or can we just keep that company in general to attain a higher degree of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is it necessary to have a spiritual path?
I guess it's up to the individual. It would depend on the individual person. I mean, there's no sort of requirement that you have to be affiliated with a tariqah or a sheikh or anything like this. It's purely up to you. The onus is on yourself. That if you're happy to be as you are, observe the halal, avoid the haram, do your 5-time namaz, attend the Jummah, and what the deen requires. If you're happy with that, alhamdulillah. There's nowhere in any text anything that it says compulsory or anything like this. It's purely an individual choice. And if Allah has decreed and destined for you to follow someone or take a path or be affiliated to someone, then that will naturally just come by. It will just happen. It's like sometimes people, will come and see my father and say, we want to take the bay'ah. And my father said, look, I don't give the bay'ah anything like that anymore. Not a formal one as I used to do previously. Instead, he says, if someone comes and I see in them that they are a genuine seeker or they desire some barakah or benefit, blessing, he said, then I just give tabarakun, abaya barakah faqat only, and that's it. I do not give the actual formal bay'ah that I've previously done in the past. So now he said, if someone wants to come and they want to learn, the doors are open, they can come and sit in the gatherings, free to come, free to go. But there's no compulsion in terms of being affiliated with anyone or anything like that. It's entirely up to yourself. So whatever else, I suppose it would be a natural inclination in your heart of feeling, whatever you sort of, if you come across someone or a particular turuq or something like this, you would know yourself, you'd feel it in your heart.
I wonder if to that question, say Imam Abu Bakr had a choice.
For Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, it was a Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that was it. There was nothing else or nobody else.
Right. Is there much of a distinction between the Sufi literature? You mentioned the poetry-based one, Imam Jalal ibn Rumi, and then you have a more Ghazali and Junaidi path. Can you expand on that a bit?
The poetry, the poetry reflects the wali. It's a reflection of his internal state, but manifesting externally into the kalam. So that poetry, that says that our poems, our qasaid, our diwans contain our spiritual states and secrets. So when you do read the qasaid of Imam al-Haddad or read the kalam of Mawlana Rumi or any of the pious people, by reading it, you are receiving like a blessing and a barakah, even though you might not see it, or it doesn't have to be manifestly open in front of you, right? It can just take place. But this is an expression of the hals, and it's a external representation and manifestation of their spiritual states and secrets. But the difference with the Sufi literature and kalam is this is more of tarbiyah, tazkiyah, islah, and things like this to rectify yourself, purify yourself, make you a better person. So externally, there's excellence, not just within you, but externally in the way that you speak, in your akhlaq, in your morals, manners, and things like this.
I've got a question actually.
Oh.
So a lot of literature has been written through the ages about the topic, from time of Harith al-Muhasibi and Tustari, and they had backlash in their times from famous jurists like Imam Ahmed about you know, writing about the topic, and up until today, obviously, a lot has been written. Are there any books that are off limits for the average reader when it comes to...
Oof, tough question.
Or can anybody just pick up any book on from a spiritual master and start reading it? I'm saying it because our teachers, they will say yes. And they've explicitly told us not, not read. You're not permitted to read.
I mean, definitely, I agree with you there, because even our own Shaykh Muhammad Sadiq Alawi, he said to my father, he said, there are certain books that I don't want you to read, I forbid you from reading. Because it's not of the knowledge that is contained in the books, it's the realities that they're talking about, and the awam won't understand, right? And they might just sort of deviate off the path. And some of the books in the Kalam was of Shaykh Abdul Karim al-Jili. He says, because you need to sit with a teacher, and so that he can explain, so that you don't fall off the path. You know, so those books, I can't think of any other titles offhand, to be honest, but that's the first one that comes to mind that I remember from what my father told me, what that Habib said to him, that said, don't read those books. You know, if you are basically, you read it with me, but you know, not by yourself. It's just that because they're talking about realities, and these writings and the statements that they utter in them is an expression of their internal state, of the hal that they're in, or what they're receiving. There was once an incident with Shaykh al-Akbar, Shaykh Muhammad Sadiq Alawi radiyallahu anhu, and he says, he stood in the entrance of the mosque and he says to the people, I'm standing on the God that you worship. And the people are like, what are you talking about? You're standing on the God that you worship. Anyway, so the public didn't like what he was saying. They beat him up. Anyway, time passed, he passed away. Sorry, I'll just finish. So he passed away. And anyway, so this mosque where he stood at the entrance and he said that I'm standing on the God that you worship. I can't remember the exact what happened, but I think they had to renovate or something. Something happened and they ended up digging this particular area. So what they found was, I don't know, you could say like an abundance of wealth, money there. So this is what he was referring to when he said, I'm standing on the God that you worship. Because those people, you know, they were after the money basically, and that's what they worshipped. That to them was the paramount importance. They'd lost sight of Allah and things. So this is when he said this is what he was referring to. But they misinterpreted his kalam. Okay, it's not a book that he's written, but it's just to go parallel to your question, just to sort of expand on the meaning, that they misinterpreted what he said, and they took another angle instead, and then they beat him up for it. Sorry, there was just that lady back.
This is completely connected to what you were saying. I find that a lot of the time is it not misconstrued. So like the inner journey that gets represented and written down, if the right person is not there to help the person, it will get misconstrued because it's quite metaphorical, quite intense, possibly the battle, whatever it may be internally for the process. So that can get misunderstood in like today's society, as in what we do day to day. We must understand it for surface things rather than deeper things.
I guess it would depend on where you go, who you go to, in terms of the spiritual, physical or spiritual rectification, and for that guidance and counseling. And I guess it would be how that individual interprets it, because how they envision or interpret or see it, that's what they'll pass on to. I mean, not just.
Is that at the point of what mental journey they are on, perhaps where they are themselves?
It's more of a. I wouldn't say it's a mental journey. It's more of like a spiritual journey, because it's to cleanse yourself of those sort of internal negative qualities in order to become a better person, so that excellence comes out of you. But it's like I said, it depends on who you go to and what their interpretation is, how they envision it, how they see it. So
what stage they are.
Yeah, what they stage they are. Yeah, exactly. So what they will do, they'll project that on you.
Yeah.
So then you will think, oh, I've got to be like that or emulate it, but that's not necessarily the case.
Sorry, one more question. To flip Sheikh Bilal's question, you've mentioned certain titles. Which literature are recommended to turn to gain guidance?
To guidance. Well, well. First of all, I'll answer that question in two parts. The first question is, last year when I was at Dar al-Mustafa, somebody asked a question similar to yours to Habib Umar in regards to that, and he then advised the one who was asking the question that, in the opinion of Habib Umar, the first book to start off with is the Bidayat al-Hidayah of Imam al-Ghazali, but to sit obviously with a teacher and to learn from it. Then after that, Minhaj ul-Abidin of Imam al-Ghazali, and then eventually the Ihya of ul-Abidin of Imam al-Ghazali. So he was saying to start off with, that's what you need to follow in terms of finding a book to follow so that you can basically become a better person. But he said, Habib Umar, that the first book to start off with is the Bidayat al-Hidayah of Imam al-Ghazali. Obviously you can sit at home and read it yourself, but if you can find a teacher that you can sit with, it just helps for get better clarity in meanings. Second,
it's the beginning of guidance.
Guidance, yeah.
The beginning of guidance.
Yeah. Bidayat al-Hidayah. And the second answer to your question is we have a forthcoming publication. This book is called The Love of the Righteous is the Key to Sainthood. It is currently with the printers. We're hoping to receive it in July at some point, inshallah. It's roughly about 467 pages. And this is basically about being on the path. And about the relationship between the murid and the shaykh, the islah, the tazkiyah, the tarbiyah, and things like this. And this is one of the 5 books that Habib al-Mashur instructed my father to write. So this text was originally done about 30 years ago. It's in Urdu, the original work. So we are now in the process of going through his works and things and translating into the English. And this is, so this is now the final print version, like I said, but roughly about 467 pages. We're hoping to receive at some point in July. But I'll just read some of what it says on the back. So, Shaykh Muhammad Sadiq, a respected Sufi sage and scholar, has authored a groundbreaking work titled Love of the Righteous is the Key to Sainthood. So in a time where authentic Sufism is scarce, this book revitalizes the essence of the tradition, offering a unique and authoritative perspective on the subject. Through a comprehensive and detailed account of the spiritual path from beginning to the end, the author provides practical methods and theoretical knowledge that cater to all readers, from novices to aspiring seekers and so on. And drawing from a wealth of Quranic verses, prophetic traditions, and anecdotes of the Sufi Masters, this book is a must-read for anyone who seeks to deepen the understanding of the Sufism and advance on the spiritual path. Now, my father himself, throughout his life, he's sat, been with different teachers and so on. He's been through the process of rectification of the nafs and things like this. He's a few years short of 80 now, so we still have the gatherings, but not as actively as before. Even when now this book has a biography on him now. So this is the first book that actually. So the original book was a little bit thinner than this. So, but what myself and my wife have done in this English version is expanded on his own personal biography, his upbringing, his teaching, his scholars and teachers that he sat with. Like he had one particular teacher, Sayyid Harib, from the Ahl al-Bayt. The last we heard, he was in Muscat, in the Sultanate of Oman, and he was responsible for the Islah of the nafs for him. So my father says to me that one year he would say, Sayyid Harib said to him, this year, no eating anything. For only 1 year, you can only drink tea, that's it, nothing else. You're not allowed to touch anything else, just tea only. And this will go on from year to year to year, as we mentioned when we talked about Shaykh Ali al-Baras. And then he says, 1 year, then another year came, and he says, now this year, no awrad adhkar, only 5 surahs from the Quran. And he listed the 5 surahs, he said, that's it. That's all you're going to read. And then this process went on and on and on and on like this. And then obviously get to a point where they think, okay, fine, now you're competent and able enough to go and guide and teach the people. But you don't get to those stages without going through, all of this. And it's a case of physical striving, the mujahid of the nafs, riyadat al-nafs, you know, the jihad of the nafs and the ego, because you have to subdue it. You cannot attain to everything that we've talked about unless the nafs isn't subdued. And this is what it's ultimately about, purification and excellence to become a better person. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you very much. Yes.
As well say then, do you think it's true, like, you know, on like the journey of trying to be a better person, to balance your ego, you have to balance as a human being. So like, you can't always be the best pure version of yourself because you live in this world.
Yeah, of course.
So it's constantly a juggle.
It will be constant juggle up and down because the nature of man is weak.
Yeah.
We're
built that way.
We're built that way, exactly, yeah. So you can only do what you can do to the best of your ability. Yeah. You know, you can't go beyond that, because if there's an expectation to be beyond that, then it's asking a lot. So you try to do the best you can to the best of your ability, to the best way that you can perform. You know, if someone gives you a task to do, or for example, if you're at work or someone, you know, something's asked of you, you do it to the best of your ability, as in the best possible manner way that it can be done. And that's all you can do. And you can, in terms of the deen, we follow what the religion tells us. Avoid the haram, avoid those matters that are prohibited, eat the halal, drink the halal, perform your 5-time salah, attend the Jummah and things like this. If someone passes away in the community, attend their funeral. And you know, these are the things. But if someone is expecting something paranormal, supernatural from you, that isn't going to happen. You can only be the best person that you can be, and that's all that anyone can ask of you. And yes, it is a struggle. It goes up and down. You might have a good day, a bad day, but that's just human nature. That's just, you know.
You have to give yourself grace, I think.
Yes, absolutely. You know, you have to give yourself a bit of a leeway, a bit of a, you know, you can. There's no Superman or Superwoman, right? So you just do what you can.
Possibly self-love and just like spread.
Oh, that's the way. Jazakallah khairan.
Jazakumullah khairan. So that ends our discussion.
Thank you very much.